In the early morning hours of August 13th, 2018, a quiet neighborhood in Frederick, Colorado, was about to become the center of one of the most disturbing murder investigations in modern American history. From the outside, the Watts family looked perfect. Chris Watts was a devoted husband. Shanann Watts was a successful businesswoman and social media influencer, and together they were raising two beautiful little girls while expecting a baby boy. Their Facebook videos showed laughter, vacations, birthday parties, and what appeared to be a happy marriage. But behind the smiling photographs and carefully crafted online image, something much darker was growing. It was a secret that nobody around them could fully see. At around 2 a.m., Shanann returned home after a business trip. A neighbor's security camera captured her walking into the house for what would become the last time. Less than 12 hours later, she had vanished, along with her daughters Bella and Celeste. There were no signs of forced entry, no struggle visible from the outside, and no obvious clues pointing investigators toward what had happened. The first alarm came not from Chris, but from Shanann's close friend, Nicole Atkinson. Shanann had missed an important doctor's appointment and wasn't answering her phone, something completely out of character. Concerned, Nicole drove to the Watts' home, where she found Shanann's car still parked in the garage, along with her purse, medication, and phone. Nothing made sense. She called 911, unknowingly launching an investigation that would unravel at breathtaking speed. When Chris arrived home, his behavior immediately caught investigators' attention. Instead of appearing desperate or emotional, he seemed unusually calm. His explanations were vague, his body language stiff, and his concern appeared strangely rehearsed. Detectives noticed that he rarely asked questions about his missing family. Instead, he focused on repeating that he simply wanted them back. Meanwhile, officers searched the home and found no evidence suggesting Shanann had voluntarily left. Her personal belongings were untouched, and her wedding ring was later discovered inside the house, something friends insisted she would never have left behind willingly. As investigators dug deeper, another piece of the puzzle emerged. Chris had recently begun an affair with a co-worker named Nico Kessinger, a relationship he had kept hidden while pretending his marriage was already ending. Phone records revealed constant communication between them during the weeks leading up to the disappearance. Financial records, text messages, and witness interviews painted a picture completely different from the happy family shown online. Then came the moment that changed everything. Standing in front of television cameras, Chris made an emotional public plea, asking whoever had taken his family to bring them home safely. To millions of viewers, his words sounded heartfelt. But experienced investigators saw something entirely different. They noticed his lack of genuine emotion, his oddly controlled speech, and subtle inconsistencies that raised immediate suspicion. Within hours, detectives decided to focus their investigation not on an unknown kidnapper, but on the husband standing in front of them. What nobody realized at that moment was that Chris Watts wasn't searching for his family. He already knew exactly where they were. The investigation moved faster than anyone expected. Detectives requested surveillance footage from Chris's neighbor, Nate, whose security camera faced the Watts' driveway. As they watched the recording together, something unusual happened. The video showed Chris backing his work truck into the driveway early that morning, something he almost never did. He claimed he was simply loading tools for work, but his nervous behavior while watching the footage told a different story. He fidgeted constantly, crossed his arms, avoided eye contact, and began explaining details that nobody had even asked about. Nate quietly told investigators that Chris wasn't acting like himself. At that moment, the detectives realized they were no longer searching for a missing family. They were watching their prime suspect slowly unravel. Soon afterward, Chris voluntarily agreed to take a polygraph examination. Before the test even began, the examiner reminded him that the machine couldn't determine guilt, only whether he was being truthful. Chris confidently insisted he had nothing to hide, But once the examination was complete, the results were unmistakable. He had failed. The examiner confronted him directly, telling him that the charts clearly showed deception whenever he denied involvement in his family's disappearance. The confident husband who had spoken to television cameras only hours earlier suddenly looked trapped. His breathing changed. His voice became quieter. The carefully maintained image of the calm, innocent father began to collapse. Detectives then introduced a psychological strategy. Instead of accusing him outright, they suggested a possible scenario. What if Shanann had harmed the children, and in a moment of rage, he had reacted? It was an opportunity to confess without immediately admitting to murdering his daughters. Chris seized it. He claimed that after an argument about separation, Shanann had strangled Bella and Celeste, and that he had killed Shanann in response. Even as he spoke, investigators remained skeptical. The story didn't fit the evidence. It was simply the first crack in a much larger lie. Faced with mounting evidence, Chris finally confessed to what had really happened. In the early hours of August 13th, after a heated conversation about their failing marriage, he strangled Shanann inside their home while she was 15 weeks pregnant with their son, whom they had already named Nico. He then wrapped her body in a sheet and loaded it into his company truck. Shockingly, Bella and Celeste were still alive as he drove nearly an hour to an isolated oil site owned by his employer. There, he buried Shanann in a shallow grave before murdering both of his daughters one by one. To conceal the crime, he forced their tiny bodies through narrow openings into separate crude oil storage tanks, believing the location would prevent them from ever being found. The confession horrified even seasoned investigators. Search teams quickly recovered the bodies, and forensic evidence confirmed what Chris had admitted. His motive was devastatingly simple. He wanted a new life with his girlfriend, free from the responsibilities of his marriage and children, and he believed murder was the easiest way to erase his past. In November 2018, Chris Watts pleaded guilty to all charges to avoid the death penalty. He was sentenced to multiple consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. The smiling family that had once appeared perfect on social media had become one of the darkest true crime stories in modern history. A chilling reminder that sometimes the greatest danger isn't a stranger lurking in the shadows, but the person smiling beside you in every family photograph.